Dollar. Dirt and money, no soul. Had to go and get it, ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack and flip for my foes. Dollar. Please tell me you can hear me. Don't turn your back and don't neglect me. Just let me know if you need me. Dollar. Let me watch out for my partners. Keep my money long, get my team strong. Let me run away from my problems.
Yep, what's good, original crew, man? We're back. Hey, man, we're back on the channel, man. We got another visual today by Mr. Ballin. Today's video, man, we got scam artists accidentally solved a murder. That's crazy.
That is crazy.
Scam artists? Oh, that's a little, you know. But Cee says. Hey, with that being said, before we get into it, make sure y'all check out the links in the description box.
Down below.
You already know where to go. If you want to first support, all you got to do is check out down below. Also, if you enjoyed today's video,
like it with a thumbs up.
Hey, let's get into this. Oh, also, shout out to the comment of the day.
Shout out to you.
You've been forgetting.
I have. I'm sorry.
That's trifling. Good for not the type of sister. Let's go. Let's check it out. Let's see what it's about. You ready?
Yeah.
Sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction. And today, I'm going to tell you 3 stories that demonstrate that. But before we get into those stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload 2, 3, even 4 times every week. So if that's of interest to you, please offer the like button a nice fresh donut. But don't tell them the powdered sugar on the donut is actually just baby powder. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's stories. One morning in July of 1997, a man named Abdel Sadr Bedawi laid in a hospital bed in El Menouphia, Egypt, which is northwest of Cairo. And he felt horrible, but this was nothing new. So Bedawi was in his 60s, and unfortunately, he spent a lot of time in hospitals because he had chronic liver disease. It made him feel weak and tired and caused him to get really bloated and vomit pretty often. But recently, Bedawi had begun experiencing some new and even more concerning symptoms. Most recently, he'd come into the hospital because he was feeling really clumsy and disoriented. It seemed like his liver disease was getting so advanced that he was now experiencing symptoms in his brain as well. So that morning, Bedawi was on a whole bunch of medications to try to treat his liver disease, but so far, it felt like the medication really wasn't doing much of anything. He still had all the symptoms he had come in with. And so feeling really disheartened, he's just laying in his bed. There's nobody else in his hospital room. And so he's just trying to get through it minute by minute. And as he's laying there, he starts to feel really lightheaded, like way more lightheaded than he had felt at all at any point while he was at the hospital. And it was so extreme, so fast that he was gonna call out for a nurse, but it was like he couldn't even make a sound. It was like his body was shutting down. And then it was like everything went black. At some point later, could have been minutes later, hours later, days later, Bedawi had no idea, but he had the sensation of waking up. Except when he opened his eyes, everything was still totally black, like he can't see anything. But in this kind of weird sensation of coming back to reality, he quickly was able to sort of feel that he still had all his limbs. You know, he could feel his whole body lying flat on some surface, which could have been the bed he was still on, he didn't know. But he's thinking to himself, I'm alive. I can tell I'm alive. I can't see. I don't know where I am. I don't know what happened to me, but I'm still alive. But when he tried to move, it was like he felt trapped. It's like he couldn't quite tell if he was literally physically being confined in some space or if he was paralyzed. He didn't know. He just couldn't move. And so suddenly he has this wave of claustrophobia come over him that he needs to escape, and he starts screaming out for help. And eventually, somebody heard him. It would turn out 12 hours earlier, when Bedawi was laying in his bed and he could still see, and he suddenly had this extreme lightheadedness come over him, and then it all went black for the first time. Well, what was actually happening is he was going into a very deep coma. It was because of his liver disease and other ailments he had, but he goes into this really deep coma. The hospital he was at, they didn't recognize it as a coma. They thought Bedawi had actually died. And so they put him in a coffin and they put him in the refrigerator.
Shut the front
And
door.
that's where he was when he woke up hours later. He was literally in a coffin. And the reason he couldn't move is because he was in a coffin and was physically restricted in that space. And so he starts screaming out. He's totally claustrophobic. And there were employees that actually just happened to be near the door of the walk-in fridge where all the other coffins and bodies were. And they heard him. They walked inside and they saw one of the bodies is literally sitting up in their coffin. And so when Bedoui realized what had happened here, he jumped out of the coffin and ran out of the room, vowing to never come back to the hospital. But that's not the end of the story. One of the hospital employees who went into the fridge and saw Bedoui sitting up in his coffin, basically was one of the people who freed Bedoui. They were so shocked by what they saw. Remember, they don't know that he was still alive. They think they've walked into the fridge and a dead person is sitting up like a zombie and is now like talking to them and running out of the room. That was so terrifying for them that they literally had a heart attack and died. And where were they placed after they were dead? In Bedoui's literal coffin.
Come on.
You're talking about some crazy, weird ass shit. Bro, what the? You know, we talk about that a lot. It's 97. We talk about that a lot, right? How, like we literally just have these conversations like this where we think sometimes, like, I think they call it too soon sometimes. I'm like, they never really give people hope. Still to this day, I feel like sometimes they jump the gun and will pronounce you dead way faster than.
But yeah, that is true. We do have these conversations, and that is true. I do think that as well. But I guess with this situation, it was a little different because they didn't understand or recognize like coma. But that's all he was going into was a coma.
just imagine, right, if they had said, all right, let's go ahead and do an autopsy, cut him open.
But you know, in a lot of other like they don't do that.
They don't do that.
So,
but I'm just saying,
But here, I do think about that a lot.
I don't know how long it takes them because he had been for 12 hours.
For 12 hours, yeah.
I don't know within 12 hours what they have already created to start doing the autopsy
here. If it was
here in America, yeah. I don't know if they would already had started the autopsy process. My thing is, once you start cutting him up and looking at the organs, he's dead now.
Yeah,
because you starting to remove certain parts of the. So technically, you are embalming and you are killing them. Even if they're not technically dead. Yeah. Some people do have go into a situation where they have very faint heartbeats.
Yeah.
Where you can't, like, the traditional way. You know, like, I just went to the hospital, not hospital.
The doctor.
I went to the doctor's office and she struggled trying to get, which ain't never happened before. But she struggled trying to get my, but she had to, not blood, like, draw blood, but we put the little clip on to check my...
Your pressure.
Yeah, is it pressure?
I mean, your heart rate.
Heart rate. Which, I get blood drawn. They say I got great veins for blood drawn. Like, this stuff is never a problem. For real, one woman told me, one time they was like, yo, you should most definitely go get blood. You got good veins. I'm like, hold on, what the fuck you mean, bro? See, like, that's... But, some people have very faint heart rates. You know what I'm saying? Like, sometimes depending on the medical condition. It was one show. What's that monk we was watching one time? Mm-hmm. Where a person appeared to have been dead, but they woke up on the table. And they were in their head. And I'm like, damn. I didn't know there was an actual true...
It probably was monk.
True condition. I don't know. It might have been monk. It might have been a whole different show. But... they were literally laying there, and they was like, help. In their mind, they're screaming for help. Nobody can verbally hear them.
So, according to this, I Google, it says a body is typically embalmed within 24 to 48 hours after death, as most state laws require refrigeration or embalming to occur within this time frame. While it can be done immediately upon arrival at the funeral home. But you have to, but it could be done immediately, but within 24 to 48 hours, it's definitely being done.
Because I think whatever episode it was that I saw of something, because that always I think he was in a car wreck or something, yeah. and they was like, oh, he's dead. He just always go into these spells where his body, like It's kind of like.
Oh yeah. I do remember
I don't know
that.
what.
I do remember that.
I don't know
think
what show or episode it was.
Oh my gosh.
I don't remember.
Yes, it was. It was.
Was it Monk?
It was Monk because they ended. Yes, I think so. I think it was. I won't be able to find it.
He was.
But...
I won't be able to find it. But he was screaming out for help. But no one could hear him. He was like, "Please do not cut me open. I am alive. I just have this medical condition where it appears that I'm deceased. You can't get a blood, like you can't get a heart rate out of me, but I am alive, and people don't know." Oh no, I can't remember. But I said this. And that scared me right there. I was like, how many people probably have been?
And maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was something else.
It might have been something else, though. It might have been something else. I do remember a TV show like that, though. And it educated me. I was like, oh, I didn't know there was a such thing. Maybe somebody would be able to comment on it. That's why I like to bring up stuff like that, because I'm like, maybe somebody else has saw it.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that's crazy, though. You ready? Or are you still looking?
No.
Early one morning in January of 1955, 25-year-old Carl Gilbert struggled to stay awake as he drove down a dark highway in rural Kansas. Carl had been driving since about 3 in the morning because he was on his way to an early morning meeting at a college that was over 200 miles away. He didn't want to be late. And so Carl, he took another sip of his coffee and rubbed his face to try and wake himself up, but his eyelids were so heavy and he really was struggling to focus on the road. So Carl was a recruiter, and so it was his job to drive around to different universities in Kansas and Oklahoma to try and recruit graduating seniors for his company. So as a result of that, he was used to waking up in the middle of the night and driving these long distances to get to these colleges. But despite this being sort of typical behavior for him, today he just felt like he was way more tired than normal. And so Carl yawned and drank some more coffee, and he could just feel his eyes getting heavier and heavier. And then at some point, he closed his eyes for what he wanted to be just for like a second, but it just felt like he couldn't quite open them again. And as he's sort of like blinking for this really long extended blink, he hears a voice in the car. He's all alone in his car. It's the middle of the night. He's by himself, but he hears a voice right behind him actually yell into his ear, "Guy, look out!" Carl, after hearing the voice, jolted upright. He opened his eyes and he realized he hadn't just blinked. He had fallen asleep at the wheel and was now speeding toward a concrete marker on the side of the highway. And so he grabbed the steering wheel and he yanked it just in time so that he only sideswiped the marker instead of a head-on collision, which almost certainly would have killed him. And so Carl, he jammed on the brakes and his car came to a screeching stop on the side of the road. And there, Carl just, he sat there just taking stock of how close he had just come to dying. His whole body was shaking, like he couldn't believe that had just happened. But eventually, he was able to calm down enough to get out of his car and assess the damage, because he did sideswipe that concrete marker. And when he got out and looked, he saw the damage was actually kind of bad. There was 2 flat tires and the whole side of his car was totally smashed up and scraped. But ultimately, Carl really didn't care. He genuinely felt thankful to be alive. Later that morning, Carl sat at a diner just a few miles down the road, eating some breakfast and reading the morning paper. A passing car had pulled over and helped him patch up his own car just enough to drive to the meeting and then also drive to this diner to get something to eat. Carl still felt very rattled from nearly getting into a very likely fatal car accident. But even more than just the fact that he nearly died, is Carl now was thinking a lot about that voice that had yelled in his ear and had woken him up and essentially saved him from smashing into the concrete marker. But what really stood out to him was that this voice had not called him Carl. It didn't say, "Carl, wake up." The voice had said, "Guy, watch out." Guy, called him Guy, and Guy was not his name.
Right.
But Carl actually had a childhood friend named Peter who called him Guy as a nickname. He was like the only person who called Carl Guy. And as Carl thought about this voice, he started to think that the sound of the voice really sounded an awful lot like Peter. And so it sounds like Peter, and they're calling me Guy? Like, Was that Peter talking to me? Like, that didn't make any sense. Now, keep in mind, what Carl is actually thinking is like his subconscious has like channeled a voice to save himself. He's not literally thinking that, his friend Peter is sitting in the back seat telling him to watch out, but he's just thinking to himself, Carl is, why wouldn't it be like my mom or like, a relative, coming in and saving my life if it's my subconscious doing it? Why Peter? Like, Peter was so random if that's what it was. Carl and Peter had kind of drifted apart as they grew up. I mean, they were still in touch, but Carl lived in Kansas and Peter was in the military serving at a naval air base in Texas. Like, there was no special reason why Carl would hear Peter's voice instead of somebody else. It felt like a completely random thing. Eventually, Carl's thinking that it just must have been my brain firing off in this panicked moment trying to save my life, and for one reason or another, it came through as like Peter's voice calling me Guy, whatever. And so ultimately, Carl just went back to eating his breakfast and reading the newspaper. But when he flipped the page over and looked at the headline of the next page, he froze. The news story was actually about Carl's childhood friend, Peter. Peter had just died in this horrific military training accident. Specifically, he had died in a crash just hours before Carl heard the sound of some man's voice saying, Guy, look out. The only person that ever called Carl Guy was Peter. And so Carl could never explain how or why any of this happened. But what he always believed is that in death, his friend Peter saved his life.
We already on two stories out the way?
Yeah, the last one's for the first one.
But yeah, that was crazy, bro.
Yeah.
Because just things happen in such mysterious ways here that's so unexplainable. You just gotta chunk it up to, hey, that's just life experiences. See, like, I like that.
Whatever.
No, like, what?
No, I just,
Has someone ever came to you?
In, like, yeah, we've had this conversation before. I feel like on camera. Like, I feel like, we've had this conversation before. And I said a lot of times it'd be more so in dreams, though.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Who's one recent came to you?
Not nobody, like, recent. Not recent. No.
I know I said one time before, I don't have dreams. I don't have dreams often. I say that. And then when I do have them, they like very quick and gone. But most of the time, I don't dream and stuff. I just try to catch. I also don't get a lot of sleep. But to here nor there, I really haven't experienced people come to me in my dreams. Last time, and I remember, it was actually her cousin. And I told you about that. And he basically told me, came to me and basically like, don't forget about me. Like, it was like, y'all don't forget about me.
Yeah.
And I was like, and it made me wake up and I was like, you're right. And I went to playing the music. And the person I'm talking about is our intro song. I know a lot of people hate it. Hold on.
Okay.
Let me.
Go ahead.
A lot of people hate it. A lot of people complain about it. At this point, we don't care.
Yeah.
Before his untimely passing, I was gonna get you to try to reach out to him and possibly get us to,
which we talked about it. Yeah.
Work on another intro song for us. But unfortunately, he has passed away, and that intro song I'll just say this: the clips in the future gonna change, yes. But the song was never, because that's her loved one. Yeah. That's her family. I'll be damned if I be like, oh, we're gonna throw that to the wayside.
And granted, maybe like later, like say for instance, you never know. We like if we like get something like more personalized, then cool, whatever. But as of now, no. Like, I know a lot of people complain about it, but it's not changing. So stop making comments about it. Stop saying stuff. It is what it is. Like, you can skip past it if you want to, if it just bothers you that bad. But yeah.
Yeah. And I just said, like, and trust, I've tried to, but I've always said, if for like commemorating wise, if we did do something, it will always be something of his.
Yeah.
So we can continue to honor him.
Yeah.
Because he allow us. Because people don't really understand, like, with stuff like that, people really don't allow you to use their word.
Yeah.
But he allowed us to, and he always been a supportive of ours from a distance. Her family, like, these are people we never went to and like, hey, watch. He was like, nah, I've been came across y'all, check y'all out, and I see, I appreciate it. It was like, oh, for real? Yeah, so, yeah, it's not going on. But, because he did die in a tragic situation.
Yeah.
But he did I feel like he came to me one time in the dream. Was like, please don't forget about me. I was like, for sure.
Yeah.
That's never going to change. That intro is never going away. So.
But I will say the last people that came in my dreams was my grandma and my aunts. My two aunts. Not the one that just recently passed, but my other aunts.
Yeah.
Which two of my aunts, I said it because I have other aunts that's passed, but two of my aunts has passed, and my grandma. But yeah, anyway. So old woman.
On the evening of December 12th, 1966, a 44-year-old man named Jose Lorente knocked on the front door of an apartment in the Bronx, which is a neighborhood in New York City. The door opened up just a crack, and Jose saw this woman inside who was eyeing him kind of reluctantly. And then when she saw, who he was and what he was carrying, she kind of, opened the door just wide enough that Jose, and also the large bag he was carrying, could fit and come inside. Once Jose was inside, the woman immediately shut and bolted the door shut behind him. Then she led Jose into the living room, where her son, a 24-year-old man named Ivan Barbosa, was already sitting on the couch. Ivan looked like a guy who had not slept in weeks. And Jose, based on the story he had been told, could understand why. So Jose had a day job as a tailor, but he also had a second and much more unique job. He was a self-proclaimed psychic medium, and he conducted spiritual cleansings for people who believed they were being haunted, like Ivan. But Jose did not actually believe in ghosts. He was firmly a skeptic. Now, he marketed himself as a psychic medium, but he knew that the cleansings that he performed were not really supernatural. They were psychological. In his experience, if somebody believed they were being haunted, they were actually just suffering from something more mundane, like depression or grief or loneliness. And so when Jose would perform his cleansing ceremonies for these people, like he was about to do for Ivan, he would go in and act very convincing, like he believed what he was doing was truly supernatural. But what he knew he was actually doing was just kind of giving these people a placebo pill. He saw that after these ceremonies, the haunted people, they would feel much better. They believed that the haunting was gone, that they were free now. And in many cases, they would get much better. And so Jose, he knew he was misleading these people, but he felt like, the ends justified the means. And so on this day, Jose was here at this apartment to do one of these ceremonies for Ivan, because Ivan's mother had called Jose earlier that day and said that, Ivan was being haunted by the ghost of this old woman, and he wasn't sleeping, and he was a wreck, and they just really needed his help, and they had heard Jose was somebody who could help. So Jose sat down across from Ivan and just did what he always did. He spoke to Ivan and said, okay, tell me about the haunting. Ivan seemed really, really nervous. But once he sort of calmed down enough to talk, he sort of stammered out that there was this ghost, this old woman who would appear in his room basically every night, and she had been for months. But he said, this woman's expression, it seemed like every night she would get angrier and angrier, and it was just horrifying to the point where Ivan, he was terrified to go to his room to sleep at night. And so basically he wasn't sleeping. He was just like terrified all the time of this ghost. Jose nodded along very sympathetically, even though, secretly he did not believe Ivan was literally being haunted. But what he did believe is that Ivan did believe he was being haunted. And that's what mattered. I mean, that's really what he was here to fix. So eventually, after Ivan was done talking, Jose told him that he knew exactly how to help him. He explained that they were going to perform a seance so they could contact this old woman's spirit and basically ask her to leave Ivan alone. Ivan looked very doubtful, but Jose reassured him that he had done this many times before and usually this works. And so Ivan ultimately said, okay, let's do it. So Jose reached over and he opened up his large bag he had brought and he began taking out the supplies that he had brought along for this seance. The first thing he did is he pulled out these big black sheets and he put them over the TV and the radio. Because in his experience, this was a good sort of overt way to symbolically shut out the outside world. And then after that, he placed a bunch of small candles in a big circle basically around the living room. And in the center of the circle, in the middle of the living room, was a coffee table. And he placed this really old-looking Bible on the coffee table. And then he also put some incense on the table next to the Bible. And then he lit all the candles in the room and he lit the incense. Finally, Jose shut all the blinds in the apartment to make sure the room was as dark as possible. And then he asked Ivan and his mother to come over and sit within the circle of candles, basically on the floor in the middle of the living room, right near the coffee table. And so once all of them were sitting down, basically in a mini circle of their own, Jose began by grabbing that old Bible and reading a prayer out of it. And then afterwards, he closed the Bible, put it back on the table, and then he told Ivan and also Ivan's mom to go ahead and hold hands. All three of them were going to hold hands. And then once they were holding hands, Jose took a deep breath and told them all to close their eyes. And then once they had, he did what he always did at these seances. He spoke in a very calm, clear voice and asked any spirits in the room to please give a sign that they could hear him. Now, typically Jose would, wait to hear some natural sound in the building, like the sound of the building settling, or maybe a gust of wind to rattle the windows, or any sound, basically, that he could then attribute to a spirit in the room. And then if for some reason some natural sound didn't occur once, the people's eyes were closed, Jose would sometimes tap his foot while everybody else wasn't looking. And he would say, oh, that's the spirit, that's the ghost making contact with us. And so for a minute or so, Jose was totally quiet, holding their hands, their eyes are closed, and he's just listening for any sounds that he could use. And when none came, he was about to tap his foot and sort of initiate the seance that way. But then something happened that Jose had never experienced before. It felt like his entire body suddenly got shocked by like an electric current. His body went rigid and he couldn't move, and then his vision just went completely black. Then there was like this series of bright, confusing images that flashed through his mind. He saw a cup of hot chocolate rattling on a table. He saw a bedsheet being torn by these dirty hands. He saw an open eye, a screaming mouth, a flash of red, then silver, then red again. The images cycled over and over in his mind so quickly they kind of became a blur. And suddenly Jose felt himself open his mouth and he wanted to scream out for help. But instead, he heard himself speak. But the voice that came out was not his own. It was like this high-pitched, gravelly shriek that almost seemed like it was coming through Jose from another world. There was a rhythm to it, maybe words, but everything was happening so fast and the images were still cycling through his mind, he couldn't make sense of anything. But then just as quickly as all of this had begun, the voice that was coming through him stopped, Jose's mind went completely blank, and his body went limp. And he sort of slowly came to, and he found himself lying on the floor, feeling completely disoriented. For a second, he didn't even know where he was, but then he kind of came to, and he realized he was in the living room of this apartment. He saw all the candles in the circle. He remembered he had come here to do this seance, but clearly something had gone wrong. And now also he found his body was sore and his throat felt raw, like what just happened? He didn't even know. Now, as Jose is sort of coming to and realizing like, okay, I'm back to reality, the first thought he had as he processed whatever that was that he must have had some kind of seizure and that he now very likely needed medical attention. But as he began to look around the room and really take stock of his surroundings, he noticed three things. One, the front door of the apartment was wide open. Two, Ivan's mother was staring at him with this completely horrified expression, like Jose was possessed. And three, Ivan was gone. Jose asked Ivan's mom, like, what happened? Where's Ivan? What's going on? And what she told him completely contradicted everything Jose thought he believed about ghosts and about seances. According to Ivan's mom, during the seance, Jose had at some point entered some kind of a trance. At first, his body had gone sort of rigid, then his eyes rolled back in his head, and then he kind of sat upright and looked right at Ivan. And as he did, he began speaking in this shrill, gravelly voice that almost sounded like an old woman. She told Jose it really sounded like it was the ghost that apparently had been haunting her son, like she had taken over Jose's body. And then, this ghost, apparently speaking through Jose, had said something to Ivan that was so horrifying, Ivan had literally jumped up and sprinted out the door. Now, Jose, he's hearing this and he can't believe what she's saying, but he's also thinking like, this woman has already convinced herself her son is being haunted by a ghost. She's just confirming whatever's happened here must have to do with the ghost. Like, none of what she's just said could have happened. Like, that is absolutely not possible. I clearly just had some sort of medical emergency. Like, I did not get possessed by a ghost. Even though somewhere in the back of Jose's mind, he doesn't know what's happened to him. He can't make sense of what's happened, but he's telling himself, there is a logical explanation for this. It can't be ghosts. But at the same time, Jose also felt kind of bad because clearly, this medical event that he believes he's gone through had frightened Ivan so badly, who was already very mentally fragile, that he's fled off somewhere. And, now who knows what he's doing, but at this point, Jose just felt like this whole thing had gone completely off the rails. He didn't want to be here anymore. He wanted to stop pretending to be a psychic medium. And so he just stood up, he gathered his things, he apologized to Ivan's mother, who was telling him, please stay, like, we got to figure out what's going on here.
Right.
But he said, I can't. I have to go. I'm sure Ivan will turn up soon. I'm sorry, best of luck to you. And then Jose walked out the door and went home. Now, after Jose got home, he wasn't thinking that Ivan was in any real peril. He just felt like, Ivan got spooked and he will come back eventually. Like, there's no real risk here. They're dealing with some sort of mental breakdown. They're not really being haunted. He'll be back. Everything's fine. But Ivan didn't come back home. And after enough time passed, his mother called the police and they began looking for him. And eventually they would find Ivan. He was in a hotel room one town over and he was dead from an obviously self-inflicted gunshot wound. Now, at first, the police just decided, okay, this is a classic case of a guy who has taken his own life, and that was really all there was to it. But Ivan's mother, when she heard that, she was adamant that they were wrong. There was more to this story. And she began telling the police over and over again that you have to talk to Jose. Because right before my son bolted and took his own life, we had this seance with Jose, a psychic medium, and Jose, he said something to my son that has to be part of the reason he ultimately died. Now, before I tell you what we believe happened to Ivan, we need to step back and sort of understand who he believed was haunting him. Because he didn't just believe some random woman, some old woman was haunting him. He believed the person haunting him was this woman named Elsie Litt, who had actually lived in his neighborhood, but had been murdered 9 months before that seance where he fled and then ultimately died in the hotel room. And her murder was unsolved. And so for Ivan, it was incredibly threatening to be seeing this woman who has been murdered, and we don't know who's killed her, coming into his room at night, looking angrier and angrier. Ivan felt threatened by her. He felt genuinely terrified that this woman is like out for vengeance and he's sort of in her crosshairs. In essence, Ivan felt like he was sort of being blamed for this woman's murder, and she was here to sort of exact her revenge effectively on him. And so it was driving him crazy. He's terrified all the time. And so here comes Jose to have this seance. And what happens in the middle of this seance when Jose basically goes into this weird, seizure / possession is after he went into the state and he's kind of rigid for a second, his eyes are back in his head, he suddenly sits up and he looks right at Ivan and he says in that shrill, womanly voice, "You killed me and you're going to die the same way." And then he snapped out of the trance, doesn't remember any of it. But Ivan, he took this as like confirmation that she was after him. This ghost was targeting him and he was so scared, he literally just ran away. But ultimately, the ghost, persisted in his life. He lost his mind and ultimately took his life in the hotel room. And so Ivan's mother is like adamantly telling the police, you gotta talk to Jose because he told my son, you killed me and you're gonna die the same way. And it sent him off running and now he's dead. And so the police, they're like, okay, I don't believe any of this. I don't believe that this seance was actually supernatural. I don't know what's going on here, but none of this makes any sense. However, Ivan's mother was so persistent that they would finally go and talk to Jose. And when police spoke to Jose and they asked him about the seance, he was like, oh my goodness, yeah, I did the seance. I don't believe in any of this stuff. And I don't know what happened. I think I had like a seizure or something. I don't even know what I was saying. I don't remember any of it. All I know is that, during the time that presumably I was possessed, I was just seeing these weird visions. That's really all I remember. And so the police asked him, like, well, what visions did you see? Humor us. And so Jose, he began to think about what he saw. He actually remembered really specifically a few images that stood out to him the most. And he said, I saw this torn bed sheet that was being manipulated with these dirty hands. I saw a silver sliver, like a knife or something. And I saw a cup of hot chocolate kind of rattling on a table. But to be honest, I just think I was having a medical emergency. I don't really know what it was. And I came to, and Ivan's mom's convinced I was possessed by this woman. I have no idea what's going on. I gotta be honest, I don't have any memory of speaking to Ivan. I have no idea what happened here. Now, Jose really didn't think anything he was saying was particularly important. He thought what he was saying was kind of nonsensical, and the police would certainly not follow up on any of this. But the police, after he said, what he saw in his mind's eye, they said, tell us again what you saw, in this blackout you had. And so again, Jose went over it, talking about the bed sheet, the silver knife or whatever he saw, and the hot chocolate. And the police were astonished because it would turn out Elsie Litt, who had been murdered 9 months earlier, she had been strangled by a dirty bed sheet that had been wrapped around her neck. There had been a cup of hot chocolate on the bedside table where she was found, and she had been stabbed repeatedly with a silver knife. Those details were not public. Nobody knew those details. And Jose certainly had no reason to know those details, but here he is, potentially being possessed by the ghost of Elsie Litt, seeing images effectively of the crime scene. It was just too much.
Yeah.
And so the police ultimately, based on the hallucinations that Jose had during the seance, did some digging into Ivan to see if maybe there's a reason Ivan's being targeted by this ghost. And it would turn out Ivan was the killer. He murdered Elsie Litt. And apparently her ghost came back to serve him justice. Police would officially close the Elsie murder investigation and would name Ivan as her killer. As for Jose, he could never explain what actually happened during that seance. But because of his experience, he never dabbled in the spirit world again.
I bet you he did.
I don't think nobody would.
Especially since he didn't believe no way, and he up here playing. See, that's why we tell folks you can't play with certain things. I know you may not believe in it, but baby, certain things it's other out there. Okay, yeah, y'all gonna get enough playing. I'll be trying to tell y'all. But anyway, cause I done seen some things in my lifetime. I ain't been here that long, but I've been here, child. But
yeah. You told me about a couple of them.
Anywho, child. But yeah, y'all better stop playing with stuff. But yeah, that's crazy. Rest in peace to Elsie. Rest in peace to Ivan. How old was? Oh, she was an older woman.
Yeah, she was
but
older.
It did have it in the article. I have to go back and look at the article and see how old.
In her 80s.
So how old was Ivan?
It never said how old Ivan was. I was wanting.
And why did you take this woman life? See.
It was just in what 1966.
66.
Relevantly, not that long ago.
But
so.
why you acting like as though you don't know that you? You know what I'm saying?
I do. They do say like you know what I'm saying. People who have taken people's lives say that like the ghosts of those people be terrorizing them. They get no peace. So
I'm not gonna have no peace until something's done.
A lot of them said that like.
I wouldn't have no peace either.
I remember the first time somebody ever told me that. I think it was my cousin.
But who don't have peace?
Like the killers. The killers
Oh
don't
well,
have peace.
I'm talking about me and the other. I ain't got no peace on the other side until something
No, I'm
done
saying
too.
like
But yeah,
they don't let them like you're not finna be able to kill somebody, get away with it, and then just
yeah,
enjoy life. But
yeah,
I think I was like young, right? Because my cousin one of the ones you
yeah.
know what side I'm talking about. He was in prison,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, he said I want to say it was one of them.
Yeah.
He says this dude he was like cellmates with. Like at night, the dude used to like trip out because every time he used to go to sleep,
I used to see.
he used to see the person he killed. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He used to see the person he killed in the corner every night when he could not go to sleep at night, and he used to like have problems because and I have heard stories of people who have killed people. They trip. Like life be kicking them in the ass. They see they like a lot of
Yes, it should.
that's the reason why they say some of them like overindulge in drugs
Mm.
and stuff so they can psychologically escape the
Reality of the
yeah.
things that they've done.
Cause this is a situation back home. This guy we know we grew up with. He took supposedly he took his own life,
Mm-hmm.
similar to this situation, but he was being investigated for a homicide.
Mm.
Told you about that. Don't. But he was being investigated for a homicide. Yes, I showed you where they supposedly had killed the dude. Yes.
Yeah.
No, you don't remember. I literally took you. I said, this is where dude died at. And they had the memorial set up right there. I said, because it was a bunch of stuff going on. The boy that got killed, I showed you his location. Previously, he had got shot. His brother had went and retaliated and killed somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And then now he in jail. So the one that got shot, they end up get back on him again and caught him outside late at night. Ran up on him, jumped on him, beat him down, and then shot him point blank and killed him.
Mm.
And supposedly, rumor was it was eating him up. And the dude supposedly had took his. I contemplate a lot. Me personally, I don't think, but hey, who am I?
Yeah.
But it bothered him so supposedly bothered him so much where he took his own life. I said, man, he was just a free, happy, but you never know
You
other
just never
sides of
know,
people.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I do understand the environment we come from. Damn near everybody, and it was behind some gang stuff. So damn near everybody part of a gang back home. So
Yeah.
I just was like, damn, I couldn't do something. Then turn around, it bothered me so much. Where
You saying you couldn't?
I'm saying I couldn't go commit that crime
Oh.
because you know what I'm
Because you
saying.
know it's going to.
Yeah.
Possible. Unless you're just a cold hearted, you know what I'm saying? That's different.
Now, do I know some cold hearted killers? Yeah, but still. Do you remember now me taking you?
No, I still don't remember.
We rode down the road. I said, that's where you said, oh, for real? I said, yeah.
Oh.
Like, cause they had his little memorial right there because he.
What's the memorial there when you showed me?
Yeah.
Okay, I definitely don't remember.
Yeah, it was like, it wasn't a lot, but it was a couple of things.
Oh.
Like, it was right there. It was right down the street from a church.
From your church?
Not from my church. I said from a church.
Oh, from
my
a
church in a
church.
whole nother town.
Oh, from a church.
Yeah, from a church. But it was like wow. But and some people say like it haunts them when they take a life. Mm-hmm. But some continue. So I wonder, like, with serial killers, like, are they haunted by, or are they able to escape that? That's a good question.
Especially because their brains are wired a little
Yeah,
different.
I'm like,
so
dude.
I'm wondering.
Because a lot of sane people say, yeah, like, it still bothers them. Like, even those who might got away, not necessarily got away, did the time, was able to get out or something.
Yeah.
It still haunts them to this day. So I wonder, would serial killers do it, like, ever bother them, haunt them, or are they able to just be like... Because think about, like, John Wayne Gacy, right? We did a video recently about him. Mm-hmm. I wonder, like, because he still stayed in the house with all the victims in a crawl space and in the backyard. did it ever, you know what I'm saying, you feel the presence, or even like Jeffrey Dahmer, did he ever feel the presence of like these people's spirits? And
Maybe it wouldn't, like,
because you can,
I don't know about John, but like for instance with like Jeff with him, it probably didn't bother him that bad because his thing was he didn't want to be alone. That's what one of the things he said. He was like he didn't want to be alone. So I guess he wanted people to
be attached.
Be attached to around people,
So
have someone there
so
all
you okay
the time.
with the spirits, but man.
So it probably didn't. Like they a little different. So that is a good question, but
that's a. I feel like that. Like, if you know someone that has, because not everybody who's committed a murder is in jail for the rest of their life. Some people get second degree, have gotten out of jail. Some don't commit murder in self defense. Some, like you got different things. I wonder how do people take, you know what I'm saying, the mentality of it,
True.
But hey, y'all spam us up in the comments, man. Let us know y'all thoughts about it for us in the comments down below. But until next time, y'all know how it go, man. I do go by the name DJ New Kid. This is
Sierra Nicole.
We are
Kid and C.
We are.
Go and get it, ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack of flip for my folks. Dollar, 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 dollar. Please tell me you can hear me. Don't turn your back and don't neglect me. Just let me know if you need me. Dollar, 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 dollar.